Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Hammered Corner. In today's video, we have an introduction into the coinage of Charles I. On screen now, you can see displayed timestamps, so you can easily revisit parts of the video in the future. But firstly, big thanks to all the members over on the Coins of Charles I, King of England, Scotland and Ireland Facebook groups for their expertise and information. This group is entirely focused on Charles I coinage. Links below to join. Charles I reigned from 1625 to 1649 after ascending to the English throne after the death of his father, James I. Charles I reigned as a Protestant leader, but married Catholic Henrietta Maria of France when she was only 15. Charles was very reserved, self-righteous, and had a high concept of royal authority, believing in the divine right of kings. The divine right asserts that a monarch is subject to no earthly authority, deriving his right to rule directly from the will of God. His expenditure on his court and his love of the arts greatly increased the crown's debts. So for much of the 1630s, Charles' biggest income was from impositions, exploitation of forest laws, forced loans, wardship, and above all, ship money. These measures made him very unpopular, alienating many of whom were natural supporters of the crown. Charles is very well known for dissolving Parliament many times, and he didn't recall Parliament for 11 years, from 1629 to 1640. Charles was then forced to call another Parliament in 1640, making ship money and other fines illegal. This was known as the Long Parliament. The king agreed in 1641 that the king could not dissolve Parliament without Parliament's consent, and the Triennial Act of 1641 meant that no more than 3 years could elapse between parliaments. He was slowly becoming a puppet king. The Irish uprising in 1641 caused tensions between the king and Parliament over the command of his army. Charles responded by entering the Commons in a failed attempt to arrest 5 members of Parliament who had fled before his arrival. Parliament had reacted by passing a militia bill allowing troops to be raised only under officers approved by Parliament. Parliament was slowly overtaking all authority, and on the 22nd of August 1642 at Nottingham, Charles raised the royal standard by calling for loyal subjects to support him. The Civil War had officially begun, and Oxford was to be the king's capital. Now, many battles happened during the Civil War, and there isn't enough time in the video to go through them all, so I will leave a link below so you can revisit them after the video. There is so much to the Civil War, so I hope you enjoyed a brief introduction, and to end it, Charles I was charged with high treason against the realm of England and was sentenced to death on the 27th of January 1649, 3 days before Charles was beheaded on the scaffold outside the banqueting house in Whitehall, London. Charles's coinage is so diverse that it's extremely loved by collectors. From the Civil War, provincial mints, and the largest denominations ever minted, Charles's reign covers it all. So let us first have a look at the silver denominations minted during his reign. Halfpenny, the penny, half groat or 2 pence, 3 pence, a groat or 4 pence, a sixpence, a shilling or 12 pence, a half crown, which is 2 shillings and a sixpence, a crown, which is 5 shillings, the half pound, or 10 shillings, and finally the largest silver hammered coin ever produced, the pound, or 20 shillings. We then have many variations of these denominations that vary in design, like the coins minted in Aberystwyth. We have coins minted from the start of the Civil War bearing the King's Declaration of Wellington, which was the manifesto by Charles near the start of the Civil War. The Latin declaration translates to the Protestant religion, the laws of England, and the liberty of Parliament. We then have coins minted in Worcester, Shrewsbury, Bridgnorth-on-Severn, Oxford, York, and many more. We have the heaviest coin ever minted, the pound, that weighs roughly 119 grams, alongside the largest gold coin ever minted, the Triple Unite, that was worth 60 shillings. I now hope that you're starting to see why the coinage of Charles I is so numismatically interesting, and how it enhances the history of such an interesting time period even more. As you can see on screen, Charles issued over 50 mint marks, marking coins minted under the control of the king from 1625 to 1643, and at the Tower Mint under Parliament from 1643 to 1648, right up to Charles's execution in 1649. We then have all the mint marks that represent the provincial and Civil War mints. These mints were established in towns to provide coinage for those areas of the country under royalist control. Charles I has by far the most mint marks, so that could be another area that you collect. We then have the milled coinage designed by Nicholas Briot in 1631 to 1632 and 1638 to 39. Briot was a celebrated coin and medal engraver born in France, who was the chief engraver at the Paris Mint from 1606 to 1625, appointed to the same post in the Royal Mint London in 1633. Then Mint Master in Scotland from 1635 to 39. Nicholas Briot invented and improved a new way of striking coins and medals by balance, which made them perfectly round, but when submitted to Paris, was disgusted at the treatment he received. That's when he fled to England. So as you can see, the coins minted and designed by Briot are very distinguishable, being the only milled coins minted during this period. We then have the extremely unique, rare and exciting Civil War coinage. These were coins minted in besieged towns to supply silver within the towns to pay the soldiers within to help defend off the parliamentarians. Now the siege pieces begun in 1644 in Carlisle. Carlisle siege occurred during the First Civil War when allied forces of the Scottish and the English parliamentarians besieged Carlisle Castle, which was held at the time by the English royalist forces loyal to Charles I. Links to more information on all sieges will be linked below. There are siege pieces minted on round or octagonal flans, and the book lists the cheapest piece in very fine grade at £15,000. One to maybe research upon, but will be out of reach for most people. During the Carlisle siege, they issued a 3 shilling and shilling pieces. We then go on to the most common and most affordable siege coinage of the Newark siege, from 1645 to 46, the last year of the First English Civil War. Newark was a mainstay of the Royalist Cavalier. At the end of 1644, it was besieged and relieved by Prince Rupert. Parliament commenced a new siege towards the end of January 1645, following more raiding, but was relieved after only 1 month. The final siege began in November 1645, by which time the town's defences had been greatly strengthened. King Charles surrendered at Southwell, 8 miles west of Newark, on May 5, 1646. He ordered Newark to surrender, which was accepted under protest by the town's garrison. All siege pieces were struck upon a lozenge-shaped flan, which were cut directly from dishes, trenchers and other varieties of silver plate in the town or obtained by royalist adherents in neighbouring county districts. They issued half-crowns, shillings, ninepence and sixpence, and you can pick up a half-decent example for £1,000 to £2,000. We then have the second most affordable piece, the Siege of Pontefract from June 1648 to March 1649, right up to Charles's execution. The Pontefract castle was besieged 3 times during the Civil War, starting in December 1644, the second in March 1645, and the final being in 1648 under Oliver Cromwell. The Pontefract castle was an important base for the Royalists, and raiding parties harried parliamentarians in the area. They issued 2 shilling and shilling coins in both lozenge shape and octagonal shape. This books in fine in Spink 2021 at 2,000 for the cheapest. We then have the rarest and most expensive of the siege coinage, from the Scarborough siege of July 1644 to 45. The parliamentarians saw Scarborough as a valuable royalist target because it was the only part not under their dominion. Sir John Meldrum took the town from the royalists, cutting off any escape routes by land or sea, and delivering the part for Parliament. Cholmondeley retreated into the castle and refused to give in, so the parliamentarians prepared for what would be a 5-month siege, one of the most bloody of the Civil War. The castle changed hands 7 times between royalist and parliamentarian control between 1642 to 48. Now there were lots more denominations minted during this period. They were a 5 shilling and 8 pence, the crown, a 3 shilling, a 2 shilling and 10 pence, a 2 shilling and 7 pence, a half crown, 2 shilling and 4 pence, 1 shilling and 6 pence, 1 shilling and 4 pence, 1 shilling and 3 pence, a shilling, a sixpence, and a groat. The crown books in at £65,000 in very fine condition, with the cheapest being the groat at £27,000. Now comparing the designs, the obverse of the Newark and the Carlisle share the same CR initials for Charles Rex, the King's Crown and denomination. The reverse then shows the OBS, which is an abbreviation for Obsidian, Latin for siege, followed by the town it was minted and the year. The Pontefract coinage shares the same king's initials, with the adaptation of the legend reading, "While I breathe, I hope," where the Scarborough coinage has castle minted on one side, with many variations in legends, no legends, and even a few with the coin's denomination minted on it. We then have the Scottish issues of coinage under Charles I. Charles was coronated in England in 1625, but wasn't coronated in Scotland until 1633. Although coining ceased on the death of James VI, a directive was made authorising the use of old dies until new irons could be prepared. Apart from the change in title and the slight change in the style of the beard, the first issue of Charles bearing his name was similar to that of King James. As you can see on screen, here are a few examples of the first issue Charles I coinage, showing the small and also unrecognisable difference to that of his father. Here is a side-by-side comparison of both James and Charles during Charles's first coinage between 1625 and 1634. Now the strange thing about Scottish coinage is that they were both issued pounds that were worth 20 shillings, each of 12 pence, thus there were 240 pence in a pound. But there were 12 Scottish pounds to the English pound. To put that plainly, on screen now we have an English and Scottish coin both bearing the XII or 12 mark on the obverse. Both have the same or thereabouts weight, but the English coin marks 12 pence, where the Scottish marks 12 shillings. So the English coin is a shilling, and the Scottish coin is 12 shillings. So because 12 Scottish pence makes 1 English pence, a 12 shilling piece equals that to 1 shilling piece in England. A couple of other terms you may see is the merk or half merk. The merk was worth 13 shillings and 4 pence, and the half merk is worth 6 shillings and 8 pence. This is another huge area of coinage to look into, and is only a small branch into Charles's huge numismatic history. The Scottish coinage was then abolished under the Act of Union in 1707. We then have the rarer coinage minted in Ireland during the Civil War. Farthing tokens were the only coin token issued under royal licence during the reign of Charles I, before the Civil War. The Great Rebellion began in Ireland with coinage of the Lords Justices. Racial and religious discriminations and the disposition of large numbers of native Irish population earlier in the century had assured a permanently discontented majority of the population, and tensions exploded into open rebellion in October 1641. 2 Protestant Lord Justices had prevented the Irish Parliament passing a royal bill to alleviate Catholic grievances. This precipitated an attempt to seize Dublin Castle, which failed, but the Irish rose in Ulster under Sir Phelim O'Neill and slaughtered many thousands of new planters. An army raised in Scotland landed in Ulster to suppress the insurrection, and when in 1642 civil war broke out in England between Charles and Parliament, Lord Inchiquin was appointed to command forces in Munster. Some, if not most of these Irish coins are quite rare and expensive. So in chronological order from the Spinks 2020 book, Inchiquin money of 1642, annular issue of 1642, issue of 1643 referred to as Dublin money. We then have the issue of 1643 to 44, also known as Ormonde money. We then have the Kilkenny issues of 1642 to 43, the issue of 1643 to 44, or also known as Rebel money. We also have local issues of the southern cities of refuge. We now have the trial pieces. These very unusual pieces were issued as trial practice, maybe to quickly estimate size and thickness needed for correct weight, and to accommodate intended final design. Some of them that made it into circulation would have been used based on its weight regardless of shape. Big thanks to the group member on the Charles I page for the educational post, the photos, and the explanation for the video. There is also a whole topic of Charles I contemporary forgeries. What I mean by contemporary forgery is a coin minted that was intended for circulation with a higher base metal percentage to pass off as a true copy. Now, I'm very privileged that Christopher Whittle, who is a Cambridge graduate and is now doing a PhD on counterfeit crimes, that is, counterfeits and clipping during the Civil War, has written a small passage and allowed me to use 2 of his coins as an example. He will be describing a bit about this area, so massive thanks to him. On screen now, you can see 2 coins minted under Charles I. The one on the left is an official half crown weighing 15.1 grams, and the one on the right was also found amongst the hoard and is a counterfeit weighing 10.9 grams. King Charles I's counterfeits, like all coin counterfeits in other periods, is an intriguing and interesting part of numismatic history, and thus great examples of a time when ordinary people were widely challenging the king's sole right over coinage production, while the elites were challenging his political powers on the battlefield. Their use was one of necessity, caused by shortages of an official coinage resulting from such factors as mass coin hoarding during the conflict. They were made of silver, base silver, using silver from clipped official coins mixed with base metal, or base metal itself, and nearly all are of lower weight than official coins, to maximise profits for the counterfeiter. Some show competent engraving, such as these counterfeits of Tower Mint shillings, and were done by someone with skill in metalwork and engraving. Many are cast, and were made by an unskilled person for his everyday subsistence at a time of great economic hardship. Numerous counterfeits obviously deceived people at the time, as reflected by the silver and base ones ended up in many Civil War coin hoards. Like this official triangle within circle mint-marked half-crown and its counterfeit from the Messings hoard. They were tolerated by people to begin with as an economic necessity, especially when the authorities were distracted by the war. However, it was a risky venture. Despite there being war against the king, coin counterfeiting was still treated as high treason, the worst crime imaginable, which could have led to the execution if the counterfeiters were caught. This was especially so when the problem became endemic, leading to a point when authorities and people stopped tolerating them. The basis of early modern English economy was a sound official coinage, with the value of its metal being the same of that of the value of its denomination. Thus, as well as high treason, it was also considered as causing a form of theft. This eventually led to people becoming more wary of them, as demonstrated by the tests cut on plated counterfeit half-crown. Hence why counterfeits of Charles I are comparatively rare today. So again, big thanks to Chris for his help with this one. And finally, I wanted to add a few reference materials that have helped me as a beginner and have helped me learn about Charles I coinage. So firstly, I purchased a must-have for all collectors, a Sphinx 2021 book. Any Sphinx book will be better than none, though older copies will lack colour and will be missing lots of new coins that have been discovered over the years, and may overall just be a bit outdated, but all Sphinx books will provide you with the information you need to start as a beginner. This English striking history has been recommended many times on the channel, and has a great section on Charles I coinage. Then we have English Hammered Coinage Volume 2 by J.J. North. Although it may seem a little dated at first, this book lists a lot if not most coin types and variations from Charles I. Although without photographs next to each variant or type, this provides a great explanation of your Charles I coins and will challenge you to work out what your coin might be from its description. If you'd like to further your research and collection into the Irish and Scottish side of Charles I coinage, then the Irish and Scottish Sphinx 2020 will be the one for you. And finally, we have one of the best numismatic resources at a click of a button, the British Numismatic Society website. There are hundreds if not thousands of blog posts, journals and write-ups by many well-known collectors and numismatists, spanning all periods of English history. There is one journal on there written by Michael Sharp on the classification of Charles I shillings, studying bust variants, types, and into the overall coin development. This classification is now widely referred to now in the numismatic world, so once you're comfortable with the basics, this journal will be great. So there you have it, my best effort into providing the first stepping stone for a new aspiring numismatist who may, like we all started, be very overwhelmed and unsure where to start. Huge thanks to all those that helped me make this video possible. Unless stated, most coins that aren't shot in my normal style are coins photographed from the Sphinx 2021 book and are not owned by myself. In the description you will find links to all the books, information and all research material that you will need in your start to learn about the Charles I coinage. Charles I coinage is arguably one of the most interesting in the numismatic world, so if you're new and excited to learn, please take your time, join the Facebook group linked in the description and ask lots of questions. If you would like to see more of Charles I on the channel, please comment below and let me know what areas you'd like me to cover in more detail. Please subscribe, like and turn on that notification bell so you never miss a video here on the Hammered Corner. Thank you all for your support, and as always, keep collecting!